skip ahead to classification and speciation, and your notes are going to be on page 89. So if you'll go ahead to page 89, we're going to talk about all the different species that are on Earth. So we've been focusing on human diseases, but humans are just one organism here on Earth. And so we're going to look now at all of the different diversity or different forms of life on Earth and how we name them. So for example, if you look at this organism, this is a Venus flytrap, but that's its common name. And it's actually kind of difficult to give this a name. Is it a plant or is it an animal? Because it looks like a plant, but it consumes, it eats, it traps and eats flies. So is it an animal or is it a plant? The very first classification was created by a man named Aristotle. And so it kind of makes sense. His name starts with an A. We can remember that he was the first person to start giving names. He named things as either plants or animals. But we know that there are a lot more living things on Earth than just plants and animals. There are bacteria, there are fungi. So Aristotle got us started with classifying. Classify means to group. So next to classification, if you'll write group, it means to group organisms according to their similarities. So Aristotle started by just looking at the organisms. Which ones look similar? And so next, a man named Carl Linnaeus developed a different system. He developed a system called binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature is where every organism is given two names. That's what binomial means. Binomial literally means two, and nomial means name. It's the two-name naming system. That's what nomenclature means, two-name naming system. Every organism receives a genus name and a species name. For a species, we can think of the word specific. If I ask you to turn to a specific page in your handbook, you're turning to just one page. So a specific name or a species name refers to just one group of organisms. So a species is one group of organisms. But then we realized that some groups of organisms are pretty closely related. So if your species are related, we give you a genus name. A genus is a more general name. If I say turn to any page in your handbook, that's a general page. And so genus names are general, but they're usually related species. So here we see the word Homo sapien. Now there are not any living organisms that share our genus name. For humans, our scientific name is Homo sapien. You can either italicize it, or if you're handwriting it, we underline it. Notice that we capitalize the genus word and lowercase the species word. So genus is always capital. And so this was the beginning of giving names. I want to give you another example about genus and species. If we take these two names, Canis lupus. Now write this with me and make sure you capitalize the C and lowercase the L. Canis lupus, and we have to underline it, and Canis familiaris. They are not the same species, but they are the same genus. They are related to each other. And so this is actually the scientific name for dogs, and this is actually the scientific name for wolves. And so we can see that they were named because they share things in common. And if we compare Canis lupus, Canis familiaris, to Homo sapiens, of course we would be able to predict that these two are more similar to each other. So by giving a scientific name, we get some information about how related organisms are. So you do need to know genus and species name, how to write the genus, how to write the species. What we see is that there are many more levels now than just genus and species. We have a whole study of classification called taxonomy, and domain is going to be the highest taxonomic rank of these organisms. We have 3 domains. The first is going to be there are going to be 2 prokaryotic domains and 1 eukaryotic domain. And I bet that you can identify which of these domains is eukaryotic. It's the one that's named, says eukarya. These 2 out to the side we want to write are prokaryotic. They're both prokaryotes, meaning they do not have a nucleus, but they're so different from each other that they still have to be in different groups. What we see based on these groups is that any living thing can be placed in one of these 3 groups. It's either bacteria, archaea, or eukarya. And so we have this big term called domain, and from there, we're going to start breaking it down into other groups. So there are 7 levels of taxa that were created: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And so when you look at these different examples, we see that kingdom is going to be the most general, and species is going to be the most specific. And so we do want to be able to identify kingdom is the most general. There are 6 kingdoms, like the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the fungi kingdom, the protist kingdom, the eubacteria, sorry, that was a little messy, the eubacteria kingdom, and the archaea bacteria kingdom. There are 6 kingdoms. And then each kingdom is broken down into several phyla. And each phylum is broken down into a class, and each class is broken down into an order. And so I really like this diagram here, because you can see that in the animal kingdom, we would have thousands of animals. But then we start to group them according to what they have in common. For example, chordata means that you have a backbone. So then we look at only the organisms that have a backbone. Notice that this excludes the sea star. And so what we see is that we become more exclusive, and we're eventually going to get to the name of just a single organism. And so the classification system helps us direct ourselves towards the name of one specific species. Now this is its species name. If you'll circle Arctos, that's its species name, but its scientific name is Ursus arctos. And so these 7 levels of taxa. Taxa are just levels of classification. Or levels of naming. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. You don't have to memorize the word, but you do have to memorize the sequence or the order. And that's why we have this sentence here. King Philip came over for green soup. King Philip came over for green soup. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. King Philip came over for green soup. So you do need to know the order of these. And that species is the most specific name. A species would only contain one type of organism, and they have to be able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. And so what you can see here are examples of namings. Kingdom, well, both of these organisms belong to the animal kingdom. They belong to the same phylum and the same class, but they belong to a different order, family, genus, and species. And so you can see that we can use these naming levels to help tell us who's related to each other. After this unit on classification, we are going to be talking about how organisms are related to each other. So if you'll make sure that you have taken the notes, and then you need to complete a summary box. Remember, your summary box has to include at least 2 vocabulary words and at least referencing 1 picture. So remember, your summary box needs to include at least 2 vocabulary words and refer to 1 picture or a diagram. So next you're going to get a handout that is going to help you practice the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and then we'll be moving on tomorrow to talk about how we decide which kingdom each organism belongs in.